to work well, the brain must be trained and well maintained. By trained, we mean we have to teach people how to manage and use their brains effectively. Most likely the majority of our readers have been urged at a time or two by parents and teachers to use your brain. Our meaning is both extension of that request and more specialized suggestion. We are urging that we give our brains more more power through the use of new tools in the same manner that reading extends the power of the brain by giving it access to vast amounts of important information, other tools that can make the brain more effective and better be able to take in, interpret, and process, store, and retrieve information. Well maintained means we continue to make use of the important tools long after we have left the hollowed hallways of schools. A fresh focus on the skills of learning ought to be a major part of reform. Of course, we must attend to the 3 R's that are not suggested that we lower the priority of subject matter. Rather, to make knowledge more useful, students need to learn how to learn. As teachers, we must give our students the necessary tools for learning: advanced reading, remembering, recording, researching, test taking, analyzing, and creating. These tools can help students excel not just in school, but also later in the workplace and life in general. Okay, now we go to the top of page 390, reminding us that education is not merely about the acquisition of knowledge. Socrates said the purpose of education is to make people both smart and good. The excellence in education is not limited to just the academic achievement. Many reforms have also been concerned about excellence of character. Much of the dissatisfaction with schools that has fueled the recent educational reform efforts that comes from parents and community leaders who believe that schools have not done enough to shape their character and ethical values of students in a positive way. Many reforms are equally convinced that a failure to address these needs of students lies at the heart of the school's problems. A good student has come to mean someone who does well on tests and achieves academically, rather than someone who is a good person who demonstrates characteristics such as responsibility, consideration for others, self-discipline, and the ability to work hard. And I would also like to add in common sense. That's a big one. To achieve excellence in students' achievement, according to these critics, serious school reform must address the issue of character education, which we define as the effort to help the young acquire a moral compass, that is, a sense of right and wrong, and also enduring habits necessary to live a good life, which I agree with wholeheartedly. Character education then involves helping children to know the good, love the good, and do the good. Excuse me. Some people argue that the public school has no role in character development and moral education because both are rooted in a deeply held religious worldviews. As such, they are deemed out of bounds at two public schools, which should concentrate primarily on cognitive skills such as reading, writing, and application of scientific method. According to proponents of this view, if parents want attention paid to moral values, they should put their children in private schools. Others question character education by asking whose values should the public schools teach. In a nation of diverse culture backgrounds and a nation committed to freedom of thought and expression, can any one set of values be taught without infringing on someone's deeply cherished beliefs? One solution to this dilemma would have a tech-supported public school to teach civic virtues that are necessary for life in democratic societies, such as respect for the rights of others, courage, tolerance, kindness, and concern for the underdog. Another way to seek an answer to this question is to first take a mental trip around the school and describe the following paragraph as the answer to the question: should schools stick simply to academic and skills? Just to go back real quick to the when I was talking about set of values. I think if you just do basic human concepts, human values, treat others the way you would want to be treated, kind of thing, I don't think that infringes upon anyone's cultural or ethnic roots or anything like that, and it's just an easy way to get along with other people, treat others the way you want to be treated. Simple as that. Implement it. Anyway, we'll go to the top of page 391. Schools that tolerate such behavior not only are failing to address the character education needs of their students, but also have become places where the intellectual goals of schooling are impaired. In addition, such schools win little support from the general public. The people who pay for public education, we believe that most educators know that it is impossible to educate students in a moral vacuum. This process of schooling necessarily affects the way that children think about issues of the right or wrong, and it affects the way they behave. Further, the overwhelming majority of Americans, regardless of religion, class, or racial background, support certain moral values such as respect, a thirst for justice, honesty, responsibility in our dealings with one another, consideration, compassion, persistence at hard tasks, and courage in the face of adversity. For many years, we believe that teaching these moral values effectively would have the indirect and important result of helping students become more academically successful. Recent research has borne out this linkage. Advocacy of these virtues, teachers and schools can positively influence the development and desirable habits and character formation in numerous ways, but two in particular are worthy of note: using the curriculum and involving students in service activities. One major approach is to use the curriculum that already exists in most schools to teach more directly and more vigorously in positive moral values that are embedded in our culture. Our history and literature are permitted with value issues and moral lessons from the past, instead of simply having students study the facts of a historical period or read a story to build vocabulary and appreciate prose style. A teacher can confront them with ethical issues and moral lessons that are integral to subject matter, instead of merely teaching scientific methodologies, and finding the teacher that can have students examine the real world implications of applied science such as genetic manipulation. Through such exploration, the students will see that the use of science and technology such as cloning, fossil fuel-based energies, and genetic manipulation is not natural, rather how we use science and ethical implications. As teachers, we must see the content of our curriculum as the carrier of our moral heritage and work to engage the students in that moral heritage. Knowing about virtues such as justice, compassion, and courage is one thing. Making them a part of one's life and practicing them diligently is another. If students are to make these virtues part of their character, they need real opportunities to practice them. As many reforms realize, schools can create opportunities for students beginning in the early grades and continuing throughout the entirety of their education to help one another and the adults in the school building. As students get older, they can be given more responsibility for working with and caring for younger students. In the later stages of high school, groups of students can take on projects in the larger community, such as helping a parent whose child has a disability or assisting with an exercise class at a senior citizen center. Likewise, individual students can provide companionship to elderly shut-ins or peer counseling to troubled youngsters. The emphasis of such programs is not merely on the study of virtues, but also on virtues in action. Service learning programs are widespread in the U.S. schools. For example, in Montgomery County, Maryland, high school students opt to learn about waste management and then volunteer to educate residents on recycling, waste reduction, buying recycled materials. And we go to the top of page 392. And compromising, since the program's inception in 2001, they have provided over 17,500 hours of service and have helped the county, come closer to its goal of recycling 50% of the waste it generates. Although Maryland is the only state to make service a requirement for high school graduation, 18 other states permit community service or service learning activities to be applied toward high school graduation requirements. And that is the end of the chapter, as we can see. And excuse me if I sounded a little weird. I was reading this while sick, and hopefully you got the gist of it. But that's the end of the chapter, and I'll see you guys next time.